Hello, my friends. Welcome to our channel. We're so glad you're here with us. Make yourselves comfortable and enjoy watching the new recap. And of course, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Helene, a literature professor in her late 30s, lived a life that, despite its apparent regularity, was filled with an intense, albeit peculiar, passion. Her relationship with Alexander, a younger Russian diplomat working in Paris, had begun some time ago and had quickly evolved into a deep physical connection that had become the central element of her existence. Divorced for several years, Helene, who was raising her teenage son Paul, found something in this relationship that disrupted the familiar rhythm of her days, although it brought with it its own form of predictability, cycles of intimacy and separation. Her social life continued in its usual course, dinners with friends, cultural events. But now everything was tinged with anticipation or memories of Alexander. Paul, her son, was entering the age where his mother's personal life became a matter of detached observation rather than active participation for him. Her connection with Alexander was a secret from most of her circle, which only added to its intensity and intimacy in Helene's eyes. From the very beginning of their acquaintance, a strong physical chemistry arose between Helene and Alexander. Their meetings quickly developed into a deep physical bond. This story portrays this development with a frankness that mirrors the source novel. For Helene, the anticipation of their intimate moments became a constant focus. The days leading up to their encounters were filled with a heightened sense of awareness, a nervous energy that permeated her work and her interactions with Paul. When they were together, Helene experienced a sense of profound release and intense connection. The world outside their embrace ceased to exist. This story depicts these moments with a focus on Helene's subjective experience, the sensations, the emotions, the feeling of being utterly present in that moment. For Helene, these encounters were a stark contrast to the often intellectualized and routine aspects of her life, as well as the concerns of raising her growing son, Paul. They provided a raw, sensual connection that had become almost a necessity for her. The nature of their intimacy was primarily physical. While there was a certain tenderness and unspoken understanding between them, deep emotional conversations or sharing of personal histories were not their strong suit. Alexander remained somewhat enigmatic, revealing little about his inner world. Helene was aware of this, but her desire, the intense pleasure she found in their physical connection, seemed to outweigh any need for a deeper emotional bond, at least in those moments when they were together. Their relationship was built from the start on a certain script dictated by Alexander's work as a diplomat. He would spend periods of time in Paris, during which Helene's life revolved around their meetings. She eagerly awaited his calls, her schedule becoming flexible to accommodate his availability, which sometimes required certain explanations to Paul. Then, just as Helene began to feel a sense of comfortable routine in their connection, Alexander would depart for work-related trips, sometimes for days, sometimes for weeks. This cycle had been an integral part of their relationship from the very beginning. These periods of absence were crucial in understanding the depth of Helene's obsession. The moment Alexander left, a palpable sense of longing would descend upon her. She would find herself counting the days until his return, her thoughts constantly drifting back to him. The mundane aspects of her life, teaching, caring for Paul, seemed to pale in comparison to the intense anticipation of their next encounter. She would replay their intimate moments in her mind, reliving the sensations, the feeling of his presence, almost as a way to sustain herself through the separation. This had become her habitual way of coping with being apart from the very start of their relationship. When Alexander was in Paris, their meetings often followed a similar pattern. He would call, usually at the last minute, and Helene would drop everything to be with him. Her plans with Paul sometimes had to be changed. Their time spent together was often short, focused almost entirely on their physical intimacy. There were no elaborate dates, no romantic dinners, just the intense connection of their bodies. For Helene, this simplicity was part of the allure of their connection from the very beginning. It was passion stripped bare, devoid of the complexities and expectations of a traditional romantic relationship. Yet, beneath the surface of this purely physical connection, hints of Helene's deeper emotional needs have been present from the start. In her internal monologues, she sometimes questioned the nature of their bond, the lack of reciprocity in their emotional investment. But these doubts were quickly suppressed, overshadowed by the intensity of her desire and the pleasure she derived from their encounters. She clung to the present moment, to the feeling of being desired, perhaps as a way to avoid confronting the inherent limitations of their relationship, which had been evident from the start. This story subtly explores the societal implications of Helene's choices. As a divorced woman in her late 30s with a teenage son, her open embrace of a purely physical relationship with a younger man might seem unconventional. However, the narrative remains firmly rooted in Helene's perspective, focusing on her internal experience and her own understanding of her desires, rather than external judgment, which may have been present in her consciousness from the very beginning. There were fleeting moments of vulnerability between them. Sometimes, after their intimacy, they would lie together in silence, and Helene would feel a pang of longing for something more, a deeper connection that transcended the physical. But these moments were often broken by Alexander's quiet departure, a reminder of the transient nature of his presence in her life, which had been part of their dynamic from the start. The cycles of Alexander's presence and absence continued, each time deepening Helene's dependence on him. The anticipation of his return became almost as significant as the time they actually spent together. Helene found herself analyzing his brief text messages, his tone on the phone, searching for any subtle clues about his feelings or intentions, even though she knew, deep down, that the relationship was unlikely to evolve into anything more substantial, an understanding that had accompanied their connection from the very beginning. As time passed, the initial novelty of their connection might have faded slightly, but Helene's attachment to Alexander remained strong. He had become a focal point in her life, a source of intense pleasure and a constant preoccupation. She had invested a significant part of her emotional energy into this connection from the start, and the thought of it ending filled her with a sense of unease and a quiet dread that had haunted her throughout their affair, and this couldn't help but affect her relationship with Paul. The eventual end of their affair was not marked by a dramatic confrontation or a tearful goodbye. Instead, it seemed to gradually fade away, a casualty of the practical realities of Alexander's life as a diplomat. His assignments took him further afield for longer periods. The frequency of his calls and messages diminished. There was a sense of inevitability to this ending, a quiet understanding that their paths were destined to diverge, which perhaps had been subtly present from the very beginning of their relationship. The final moments of their connection were understated, almost anticlimactic. There were no grand declarations of love, no promise of a future together, just a quiet parting, a sense of something ending, leaving Helene with a deep sense of emptiness and a quiet ache in her heart, which was the result of everything they had shared. This story concludes with Helene reflecting on the intense period of her life that was so completely dominated by her passion for Alexander. The ending is not one of neat resolution or easy closure. Instead, it's an acknowledgement of the profound impact this simple passion had on her. She emerged from the affair changed, perhaps with a deeper understanding of her own desires, her vulnerabilities, and the complex and often inexplicable nature of human connection, which had been explored throughout their story, and perhaps with a new understanding of her role as the mother of a teenager, Paul. The final scenes might depict Helene returning to the routines of her life, her teaching, caring for Paul, but with a subtle shift in her demeanor. The memory of her intense physical connection with Alexander, the obsessive longing, and the fleeting moments of intense joy will likely remain with her, a significant and indelible chapter in her life story. This story leaves the audience to contemplate the nature of such intense, albeit temporary, connections and their lasting impact on the individuals involved, exploring the complexities of desire and the simple, yet profound, power of passion that had defined Helene and Alexander's relationship from the very beginning. This story, focusing on the chronological development of Helene's relationship with Alexander and delving into the nuances of their connection, aims to provide a comprehensive narrative inspired by the events. By emphasizing Helene's internal experience and the cyclical nature of their affair, we can understand the depth and complexity of this seemingly simple passion that had been the driving force of their relationship from the very start. Thank you, friends, for watching this story. Don't forget, as always, to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new exciting stories. See you soon.